The title of this video is, do you ever feel spacey or like there's something wrong with you? Or maybe like you got up on the wrong side of the bed? You may sense that something is off, but you don't know exactly what or why. If you experience symptoms such as fatigue, forgetfulness, difficulty focusing, discouragement, ungroundedness, brain fog, spaciness, or confusion, you may think there's something physically wrong with you, and of course, you do want to check that out. In fact, step one is rule out any physical causes. Before diving into the energetic and spiritual dimensions of your symptoms, it's important to cover your bases. Fatigue, brain fog, or spaciness can sometimes be caused by medical conditions, such as a thyroid imbalance or a vitamin deficiency or sleep disorders or hormonal shifts. So a physical exam, including blood work, is a crucial first step. However, if your health checks out and the symptoms persist, it's time to explore a little deeper. Now, often there are some energetic overlooked causes, those rooted in what I call subtle energy fields that surround and flow through you and around you. You might even think that everyone experiences symptoms like this, at least from time to time. And you might even think, well, it's normal. Some people feel these ways so frequently that they adjust to it as if it's a natural part of life. Society often chalks them up to stress or mental health issues. Some people feel this way so consistently that they begin to accept this as their permanent baseline. But the big question that you want to ask yourself is, what is really going on? And what can be done about it? So here's one of the things that can happen. Everyone, to some degree, picks up energetic residue from people and environments they interact with. The difference is that some are simply more aware of it. The truth of the matter is that many, if not most people, do experience some of these spacey symptoms at times without knowing the causes. There's at least two major subtle energy contributors to these symptoms, and they have actually simple solutions. The first cause can be that you have absorbed subtle energy from other people. Now, that might sound a little strange, but this is quite pronounced in people who are empathic. But that's only because they notice it more readily than other people do. But it really happens to everybody. And knowing what to do about it is really critical to clear it off so it doesn't happen and stay with you all the time. Most people are completely unaware of this cause. And here's why. Picking up energy patterns from others is far more common than most people realize. Everyone carries mental and emotional subtle energy patterns. These patterns, composed of life force energy, hold characteristics of what the person has experienced. It has memories of events. It has the emotional content. It has the conclusions they came to. And these reside as what are called thought forms in a person's aura and chakras, and they can also reside in the physical body itself. Now, when you're near someone, especially in emotionally charged situations, you can absorb fragments of their energy field without even realizing it. These subtle energy patterns can even cause you to feel moody and angry or irritable and confused, and of course, spacey. Now, let me give you a few examples so that you'll know what I'm talking about. Think back to a time that you walked into a tense situation in a meeting or an emotional gathering, and someone said, "The tension is so thick, you could cut it with a knife." Now, they might have thought that was a metaphor, but it actually is a lot more than that. You are likely feeling real energetic pressure, and you may have unknowingly carried some of the stress energy with you after you left. You might be feeling irritable or drained without understanding why. Almost everyone can feel that, but may not realize some of that stress energy can be carried home after you were at a meeting where that energy was present. What people are sensing is a subtle energy pattern created by the reactions of people in the room. And it can cause you to feel anxiety, stress, irritable, anger, or moody for hours or even days after a meeting. Here's another example. Have you ever found yourself crying more deeply than you expected during an emotional film that you were watching, maybe in a movie theater with a group of people? You might not just be reacting to the storyline. You could be absorbing the emotional energy of the people around you. A similar reaction can happen when you're around a group of people experiencing deep grief, maybe at a funeral, for the loss of a loved one or a pet. A third source could be being around angry people. Now, suppose a friend had a heated argument before meeting up with you, but that person didn't even mention it. The anger produces subtle energy patterns, and they can linger for hours or even days with that person. And if you're exposed to that person, you can find yourself feeling yourself irritable and upset and not even understanding why you're feeling that way. The person may not even said anything about the argument, but being around them can be sufficient for you to acquire some of that anger energy. Yes, simply being in their presence could cause you to feel unexpectedly upset or agitated. This is because emotional energy like anger lingers, and it can affect anyone in proximity. These subtle energetic exchanges can result in symptoms such as confusion, irritability, depression, anxiety, and of course the feeling familiar of being spacey or ungrounded. So you can see that these are very common examples that almost everybody experiences from time to time and never even wonders or questions why. So the condition is not just psychological, and it may not even be physical, but it's something you can certainly feel in very real ways. Now, since the symptoms can be caused by subtle energies, knowing about them can put you in a power position to clear them. The second major source of the symptoms that I listed earlier is called energy fragmentation. When your energy is fragmented, you feel spacey, and even some of the other symptoms that I've mentioned. Some shamans refer to this as soul fragmentation or as soul loss. But more accurately, it's a fragmentation of your whole energy body, not really your soul. Your soul always remains whole and untouched. So what exactly does this mean? Well, the soul doesn't fragment. Your soul doesn't fragment. But your subtle energy field can fragment. And to understand fragmentation or disconnection, you need to understand that there are many different subpersonalities or identities that make up who you are. So each of your emotional reactions has subtle energy patterns that embody that emotion. For instance, you probably have an anger subpersonality that rears its ugly head when you are blocked from obtaining what you want. or somebody says something to upset you. Maybe they're trying to control you. Something may be said, and you get excited, you get agitated, you get angry, you yell, you stomp your feet, and you wonder, where did that come from? Something happens and it triggers. That is activating your anger subpersonality. And you then find yourself reacting spontaneously before you even have time to think about it. Have you had that happen? Well, each of your personality traits embodies a subpersonality. So fear has a subpersonality, depression has a subpersonality, anxiety, worry, futility, guilt are all examples of negative emotions and negative subpersonalities. Charisma, compassion, joyfulness, serenity, love, kindness are a few positive subpersonalities. And they can be activated or triggered by events and circumstances. When you put all of these things together, then you have a conglomerate that you call your overall personality. When something highly charged or traumatic happens to you, pieces of your subtle energy subpersonality can actually separate or fragment off from you. And when this happens, you feel like something is missing. This is what causes you to feel spacey or ungrounded, and some of the other symptoms such as fatigue or forgetfulness, difficulty focusing, or confusion. This can happen when something jars you, knocks you off center, shocks you, such as maybe nearly having an accident, being startled and surprised, being knocked out, experiencing deep loss, or having a reaction from a drug. Most people recover from these experiences over time, and they adjust to the fragmentation, and they may even come to accept the symptom of fragmentation as normal or a new normal. You get used to it. The problem is some symptoms can continue for years or decades if untreated. Haven't you noticed some people who seem to be not all there, a little bit like they're spacey all the time? You know, we'll say the light's on, but nobody's home, or they just seem to drift in and out. When you experience a fragmentation, a part of your subtle energy body disengages, or the subtle energy body can develop cracks or holes in it, or subtle energy leaks and breaks. This causes you to feel spacey, or like you're not all there. This causes the symptoms, like all the ones I've been mentioning, and it hinders you from experiencing your potential and developing as a whole person. When the fragments are not recalled and reintegrated, you have a difficulty feeling like a whole person. Sadly, in our modern world, almost everybody has some degree of fragmentation. In fact, I would say it's pretty rare if you don't have some degree of fragmentation without even being aware of it. You get used to it. It can be a consequence of everyday life. It could be caused by an accident, an injury, a sudden unexpected event that shock you. But trauma isn't the only cause. Energy fragmentation can occur from emotional abuse or betrayal, drug use or overdose, a severe illness, surgery, anesthesia, going into surgery, a sudden loss or grief, unexpected life changes. If it's left untreated, these fragments can dominate your reactions, making you feel stuck and overwhelmed or unworthy without knowing why. You assume it's you. You assume it's just something that you've been through, and you've got to figure a way to cope with it. Your soul does not fragment. It's always whole and complete. When you disconnect from your core soul, you then operate from survival instincts. You gradually lose awareness of what the soul is and what resources it offers you. And this disconnection increases over time and can even intensify by having one traumatic event after another that cause multiple fragmentations to occur. So the identity of your personality and who you think you are can actually fragment into a bunch of different pieces. When that happens, the fragments can rise to the surface and exert an influence that causes you to react negatively without you even understanding why. For instance, you may have anxiety flare up, and you wonder, where did that come from? Because a fragment is disconnected from your soul, it triggers worry or fear. It gets excited, agitated, afraid of what it doesn't understand or what it thinks is threatening. And in other cases, other fragments can activate, causing depression, self-hatred, hopelessness, bitterness, suffering, irritability, neediness, struggling, sadness, depleted energy, and being blocked or stuck. As a result of the fragmentation, you can experience an increasing feeling of being alienated from yourself or from life and from your soul. And this causes you to feel burdened with emotions or feeling numb. Or you might have an inability to find solutions or to be able to follow directions. You might find yourself strangely being confused by things you wouldn't think would normally confuse you. What generally happens is at some point that you try to ignore it or bury these things, and then they become in a sense, part of who you are. You think it's just part of who your personality is. With distractions and distortions, what generally happens at this point is you try to ignore or bury these sensations, maybe with activities such as involving yourself with a lot of distractions, so you can avoid the inner feelings of feeling helpless or hopeless. Here's a common and tragic way fragmentation often happens. Imagine that a child is hurt, neglected, or abused. In order to cope with these experiences, the child escapes by detaching from the situation. In some cases, the child does this by seeking escape into a fantasy world, or may even have out-of-body experiences. So these become self-protective coping mechanisms. They are utilized then for the rest of that person's life. Tribal cultures often label this as soul fragmentation or soul loss. What actually happens is the mind attempts to cope with the trauma by ignoring or blocking the emotional wound. Now, for instance, a person who dreams of being a biologist when they grow up, but they're being forced to conform to live by whatever their parents' expectations are, maybe by going into the family business, they feel pressured to ignore their own dream, to in order to receive their parents' approval. The person then either becomes angry at the parent and blames them to avoid taking responsibility for the dream being thwarted, and they develop a chronic depression. They're never happy or satisfied with their life because of not being accepted by their parents. In this way, the person ends up living life through a fragment, through a subpersonality that is sad or unfulfilled. There are numerous symptoms besides feeling spacey that give clues to possible energy fragmentation. So it leads to a whole wide variety of problems by reducing your life force energy and trapping you in the energy of the fragment. So if it's an anger fragment, you might be kind of an angry, irritable, bitchy person to be around. And it can last an entire lifetime because a person doesn't realize what the condition is, certainly doesn't know how to remove it or solve it. But to heal from fragmentation, you must recognize it has occurred. It fragmented. How did that happen? So you identify the nature of the fragment, and then you apply subtle energy healing methods to address the condition. And once that is successfully done, you'll feel more alive than you've ever felt in your entire life. Your mind will suddenly become clear and certainly a lot more than what you've become accustomed to. And what I often hear people say is, wow, now I feel like I'm supposed to feel. This is what I always thought I was supposed to feel like. To help you have a better understanding of your fragmentation, look for any of these 15 symptoms. Now, there could be a lot of others. I just made up a list of 15 here that are pretty common. Number 1, you have gaps in your memory. 2, you often feel like you're living in a bubble. 3, sometimes feelings of depression arise for no reason at all. 4, your senses seem muted, or sometimes you feel emotionally numb. 5, you get spacey or you mentally drift. 6, you have feelings of anxiety and you don't know why. 7, getting a good night's sleep is rare for you. 8, sometimes you feel confused or lost, and you can't seem to have meaning. Number 9, you find it difficult to focus or concentrate. 10, you feel like you lost a part of yourself after a loss or trauma. You feel stuck and unable to move your life forward. 12, you are prone to have major or minor accidents. 13, you often feel ungrounded or uncentered. 14, you feel drained or fatigued with no medical reason. 15, you try to protect yourself. You try to prevent feeling disconnected with addictions, such as being busy, absorbing yourself in work, chasing after sex, trying a lot of different kinds of drugs, alcohol, or even food. Assuming you are experiencing some fragmentation, how do you regenerate? How do you reintegrate? What do you do after you fragment? Well, the place to start is with recalling the originating event, if you can. What caused that fragmentation? So think back. When did you first notice you started feeling spacey? When do you notice that you started feeling disoriented? When did I first begin feeling this way? Secondly, what event, loss, or experience might have triggered it? 3, what part of you seems to be missing or hidden? 3, what part of you is missing or hidden? 4, describe the symptom in one sentence. I am upset for no reason. I am feeling spacey. 5, rate the degree of reaction or disassociation that you feel on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the strongest. 6, next, say the following to yourself. I call all of my energy back to me from the fragmenting event. I ask all of my energy to return and reintegrate. I call all of my energy back to here and now, right here, right now. If the reason you feel off, it could be you picked up energy from someone else, or a combination of the two. If you sense your reaction is from someone else's energy, simply affirm, I send all of this other person's energy back to them now. And because it is not your energy, it'll spring back to them just like a rubber band. You may need to repeat this more than once to get all of your energy off of you. And if there's a strong emotional reaction to the other person, you'll probably need to incorporate some other healing methods as well. Maybe forgiveness or chakra clearing or some other methods. At this point, you want to firmly ground yourself by imagining that you're sitting on a tree stump 3 feet in diameter, and that tree trunk goes all the way straight down to the center of the earth. And anchor the column of energy strongly from your first chakra to the base of your spine, and then all the way down to the center of the earth, where you bind it with thousands of roots into the very core of the planet. It's not necessary to see this in your mind's eye, just as long as you hold the intention. That's what makes everything work in the subtle realm, your intention. It helps to move your lips and describe to yourself what you're doing while you're doing it. Release negative energy and other people's energy that might be accumulated on you down the grounding column, deep into the earth, where it is automatically neutralized. The feelings of disconnection, fatigue, or spaciness are not your natural state. They're energetic indications that something within you is ready to be healed. Your soul is always whole, always present, always available to guide you and to heal you. The more you release foreign energy and call back your fragmented aspects, the more you reclaim your clarity, vitality, and purpose. And in doing so, you begin to remember who you really are. I have more details about some of this in my little free ebook called Stay Strongly Grounded. Be strong, stable, and centered in a chaotic world. It's on my website. It's under the free resource tab. If you want an audio that guides you through this process and some other ways of clearing energy, take a look at my subtle energy neutralizer. It's also on my website. Grounding needs to be done regularly. I suggest that you make it a daily habit when you first get up, sitting on the edge of your bed. If you do the grounding process and you still feel spacey or you have other symptoms, I suggest that you contact a subtle energy healer for some private sessions to help them clear you. There is no reason anyone need have energy fragmentation. The condition is relatively easy to fix when you know how. So until next time now, this is Jonathan Parker.